Hey, Stock Explorers, ready for a deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're looking at Vistra.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, they're kind of proving that boring doesn't always mean a bad investment, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, they actually beat the S&P 500 in 2024.
No way, really?
Yeah, their stock went up by, like, almost 258%. Crazy, right?
For a utility company, yeah, that's wild. How'd they do that?
It's a pretty cool story.
Okay, I'm listening.
It all ties back to the AI boom.
AI. What does a utility company have to do with AI?
Well, think about it. AI needs massive data centers, right?
Yeah, to process all that data.
Exactly. And those data centers, they eat up tons of energy.
Makes sense. They're running 24/7.
Yep. And they need reliable green energy sources. That's where Vistra comes in.
Oh, so they're supplying the power to these data centers.
Exactly. But that's not the whole story. There are lots of energy companies out there. What makes Vistra so special?
Vistra, well, they made a really smart move early in 2024.
What do they do?
They acquired Energy Harbor.
Energy Harbor.
Yeah, and Energy Harbor had a big portfolio of nuclear power plants.
So they were ready for the AI energy demand.
Yeah, I think they saw what was coming with AI and knew they needed to be prepared.
That's some serious foresight.
It really is. And if you look at what other tech giants were doing around the same time, you'll see the same trend.
Like who?
Microsoft. They partnered up with Constellation Energy to actually restart part of the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and Google, they jumped on board too, made a deal with Kairos Power for energy from those, small modular reactors.
SMRs, yeah, we've talked about those before.
Right. So even these companies that are all about green initiatives, they were turning to nuclear power.
Seems like Vistra was definitely in the right place at the right time.
Definitely. But here's the thing. Vistra isn't just about nuclear.
Oh. What else are they doing?
They're also putting money into a whole mix of energy sources.
Like what?
Solar, for one, and energy storage, too.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. They've already hooked up 2 huge solar facilities in Illinois to the grid. And they've got plans for more.
That's impressive.
And there's this really interesting thing they're doing. It's called the hub concept.
Hub concept, what's that?
So they're taking their existing power plant sites and transforming them, turning them into these multi-technology energy generation hubs.
Wait, so one facility that can generate energy from different sources?
Exactly, like their Baldwin plant. It's going to produce energy from natural gas, solar, and they're even thinking about adding battery storage.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a really smart, flexible approach.
So they're not just riding the AI wave, they're building a whole diverse energy portfolio for the future.
Exactly. But, there's something else we need to talk about.
Oh, what's that?
It's a potential disruption on the horizon.
Uh-oh, what kind of disruption?
It's called DeepSeek.
DeepSeek. Remind me, who are they again?
They're a Chinese startup,
Yeah.
and they've developed this open source AI model.
Okay.
The thing is, it uses way less computing power than the American models. So it could really impact how much energy those data centers actually need.
You mean even though Vistra is ready to supply all this energy for the AI boom, the boom might not need as much energy as we thought.
Yeah, it's a possibility. If DeepSeek's model takes off, it could mean a shift towards more energy-efficient AI. That could slow down the growth that companies like Vistra are banking on.
This DeepSeek thing is definitely something to watch. Seems like Vistra has done a lot right so far, but this could throw a wrench in the works. I'm really interested to see how this all plays out.
Me too. And we're going to dig into that more in the next part of our deep dive. We'll take a closer look at Vistra's financials, their growth prospects, and how they might navigate this potential DeepSeek disruption. So stay tuned.
Can't wait. This is getting good.
So we were talking about how Vistra's move with Energy Harbor and those nuclear plants has really set them up to, ride this AI wave.
Right, and all their other stuff too, like solar and the, the hub concept. But now there's DeepSeek, kind of like a rain cloud on the horizon.
Yeah, that's true. DeepSeek's model could really change things. But even if things slow down with all those energy-hungry data centers, Vistra still has a lot going for it.
Like what? What makes you so confident about them?
Well, let's take a peek at their financials, their numbers. For the third quarter of 2024, they reported a net income of, get this, $1.837 billion.
Whoa, billion with a B. That's a lot of dough. But I gotta admit, I'm not exactly a finance whiz. What does that really tell us?
It basically means Vistra's making serious bank. They're in a really strong financial position.
So they can, invest more, keep growing.
Exactly. They can invest in future growth, they can return value to their shareholders through those stock buybacks, and of course, pay dividends.
So even if, this whole AI thing doesn't explode as much as predicted, they've got options. They can keep their investors happy.
Absolutely. And remember, they're not just focused on the big power plants, they're also doing some cool things in the residential energy market.
Yeah, what's that all about?
So they teamed up with this company, Sunrun, and they launched a residential battery aggregation program.
Battery, what was that word again? Aggregation?
Yeah, basically, they're harnessing the power of all those home solar and battery systems.
So like individual homes.
Yeah, by kind of pooling the energy stored in all those batteries, they can basically create a virtual power plant.
A virtual power plant. Interesting. So they can send that energy back to the grid when it's needed most.
Exactly. It's like turning regular homes into mini power stations.
Clever.
Yeah.
But why is that such a big deal for Vistra?
Well, for starters, it makes the grid more reliable, especially in places like Texas, where, they've had some energy issues in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's also good for homeowners. They get financial incentives for participating, and they still have control over their systems if there's like a blackout or an emergency.
Win-win. Vistra gets a more stable grid, and homeowners get to help out and maybe even save some money.
Right. And it just shows how forward-thinking Vistra is. They're not stuck in the past. They're embracing new ideas to make the energy future more sustainable and resilient.
So we've got the big power plants for data centers, solar farms, energy hubs, and now they're even tapping into individual homes. It sounds like they've got all their bases covered. But what about that DeepSeek thing? It's still kind of hanging over everything.
That's true. We can't just ignore that. The possibility of more efficient AI really could shift the whole energy landscape in ways we haven't even thought of yet. But I still think Vistra's in a good spot to adapt. They've got that diverse portfolio, and they're clearly thinking ahead.
So even with the uncertainty around DeepSeek, it seems like they've got a solid plan. What else should we know about them before we get into the really nitty-gritty stuff?
Well, they just recently bought out the rest of Vistra Vision, so they have full ownership of all their nuclear, solar, and energy storage assets now.
Consolidating their power, huh? That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
And they also announced another $1 billion for share repurchases.
Wow, they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, and when you combine that with their dividend payouts, it's clear they're serious about rewarding their investors.
Okay, so they're financially solid, diversifying their energy sources, embracing new technology, and taking care of their investors. Sounds like they've got a lot going for them. But zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
What about the bigger picture, the challenges, the hurdles? What are they up against moving forward?
Well, you got to remember, the energy market is always in flux. It's never static. Government regulations, new technology popping up all the time, what consumers want, all of that plays a role.
Right, and like we saw with DeepSeek, stuff can come out of nowhere and totally change the game.
Exactly. Vistra is going to have to stay nimble. They have to adapt to these challenges if they want to stay ahead of the curve.
It sounds like their future success really depends on their ability to anticipate and adapt to these changes.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Vistra such an interesting case study. They've made some really savvy moves, but the energy landscape is unpredictable. It's constantly shifting.
Okay, so Vistra, they're on the move, making big decisions, getting ready for a future where AI and clean energy are calling the shots. But there are bumps in the road ahead. What do you think? What's the ultimate takeaway here? What does it all mean for their future?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll wrap it all up and try to make sense of what the future holds for Vistra, so stick around.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Vistra deep dive. And man, it's been a wild ride. We've seen how they jumped on that AI boom, how they're not putting all their eggs in one basket with energy sources, and even how they're bringing regular homes into the energy game.
It's really impressive how they're always looking ahead and adapting to the changes in the energy world.
Totally. But as we wrap up, what's the big takeaway for you? What's the secret sauce to Vistra's success story?
I think it boils down to their willingness to make bold moves, not be afraid to shake things up. Like that Energy Harbor acquisition, perfect timing. They clearly understood what was coming with AI and how much energy it would need.
And then there's those energy hubs, super innovative. They're not just betting on one type of energy. They're building a whole system that can handle anything.
Exactly. And don't forget about the whole home battery thing. That's huge for grid stability and getting everyday people involved in the clean energy shift.
For sure. But we got to talk about DeepSeek, right?
Yeah.
It's still a bit of a question mark. How do you think they'll handle that potential curveball?
Well, it's definitely a challenge, but Their diversification strategy, having all those different energy sources, I think that gives them a real edge. Even if those data centers don't need as much energy as we thought, they've got other options.
So their solar projects, the energy storage stuff, even the home battery program, all of that could help make up for any losses if data center demand slows down.
Exactly. And they're always looking for new opportunities, new solutions. They're not the kind of company to just sit back and wait.
So for investors out there, what's the bottom line? Is Vistra a good bet?
Well, they've got a strong track record, their financials are solid, they've got a clear vision for the future, and they've shown they can adapt. That's all good news for investors.
Plus, they're not forgetting about their shareholders. All those buybacks and dividends show they're committed to sharing their success.
Absolutely. But like any investment, there are always risks. The energy market is a complicated beast, lots of moving parts, government regulations, new technologies popping up all the time. You just never know what might happen.
So it's not a sure thing, but they seem to be doing a lot of things right.
Yeah, I'd say they're definitely a company to keep an eye on. The energy game is changing fast, and it'll be interesting to see how they continue to evolve.
Well, Stock Explorers, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into Vistra. It's been amazing to see how a company that might seem kind of boring on the surface is actually playing a huge role in shaping the future of energy.
Totally agree. It just goes to show that innovation and adaptability are key in any industry, but especially in a dynamic field like energy.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes where we'll continue to explore fascinating companies and market trends.
See you next